And we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brain Food Live on Air. At least I think we're live. There was a rather alarming pause on screen there as a screen completely froze. So I'm not sure whether I am actually live. So let's just quickly check that first of all. Folks, if you're watching this on Crowdcast, do let me know whether you can hear and see me okay. Jim, actually very good and spot on to let me know that's the case. We are broadcasting this on Crowdcast, of course, where we're happy to interact with everyone. We're also launching this live on LinkedIn also. So if you are watching this on LinkedIn and you can hear and see me okay, do let me know whether the audio and visual is fine. I think there's probably more than half of us are actually watching it on LinkedIn. So let me know in the comments whether you can hear and see me okay. Great stuff. Thank you, Heather. I was about to ping you. Hope it's not too early for you in Massachusetts. Okay, we're going to be cracking on with this Brain Food Live. This is a double header. We've had two this week. This is the second one of the week, and another one where it's going to be data-driven stuff. I think just touching. Getting some sentiment from the audience. We want to do panel discussion. We do care about debate, but we really do also want to ensure that we back everything up we say with data. And our good friends today at Joveo have produced, I think, a super underrated interactive report, which is hiring benchmarks for the 16 most common job occupations in the United States. And I did a bit of research on this, and this constitutes something like 30 million people doing these jobs. Something like 20% of all jobs recruited for are covered by these particular occupations. So I thought, okay, if we have the data, let's talk about this. This is a significant sort of chunk of people that are actually that are going through the recruiting processes that we go through. Let's have a deep dive and figure out what the benchmarks are. And in case you wanted to know what we mean by benchmarks, we're talking about cost per application. If you're hiring a nurse, for instance, somewhere in the US, how much does it cost you to do that? We're talking time to hire. We're talking time to fill. We're talking about where in the United States it actually makes most sense for you to relocate or locate an office for X, Y type of worker because there's the local labor there. These are the sorts of things that we're looking to do and cover today. So in order to help me do that, I'm going to invite my friend Yaz Dalal on screen to help with this. Yaz, I've just invited you to do that. So let me know whether you can accept that and come on screen. And then we'll get cracking with the rest of this show. Okay, cool. By the way, I think there's a poll we want to try and run. For the folks who are recruiting in the US, why don't you dive in and take a look at the poll I've got on the right hand side of the panel here. Would you want to give me a very simple yes/no on this? Question is, in 2026, for the most common job occupations in the United States, is hiring going to be easier this year than it was last, or is it going to be harder? Let me know in the vote there. What you think that's the case. And by the way, no secrets here. I'm going to just share into the chat what the Joveo report looks like. It's actually an interactive, so no need to, no poll. Yes, there is. Jim, check it out. There is a poll. Check it out here. Here it is, the interactive insights. So do check it out there. You can just browse that at your leisure. It's very extensive, which is part of the reason why we're going to help you guide through it today on screen. Anyway, we have Yaz on screen. Finally, how are you doing, Yaz? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, Hung. I think it's going to be an amazing year, maybe a crazy year. I'm excited about it.
I think craziness is as of course, isn't it? We're used to crazy these days. We're all strapped in. I feel like we're all strapped into a roller coaster, Yaz. Nobody is entirely in charge of this roller coaster. We're just going to go up and down it. That's it. Just make sure you don't fall out. That's the only mission we got.
Life would be boring otherwise.
Indeed so. We're in it to win it. So let's get on with this, Yaz. Actually, Yaz, for the people who don't know you, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you and what it is you do?
My name is Yaz Dalal. I'm with Joveo. I'm our Chief Growth Officer. My 2-year anniversary is today, so I'm really excited because 2 years ago, I was trying to find a place where I could work in the intersection of talent acquisition and AI. And I'm really delighted that I chose to join the Joveo family. And we're doing some really cool things, and we're seeing some amazing progress with our clients. And it's going to be a crazy year for them and for all of us, but we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And for the folks who kind of need to know a little bit of context on the data we're about to share, where does this data come from? Like, people might not know what Joveo do from that perspective. So how have you sort of produced this data? Where's it coming from?
Look, Joveo is working with some of the world's largest companies, right? Ultimately, we're in the business of helping really large, amazing companies find large numbers of amazing people. That's our mission. Joveo's a contraction of a phrase, it's a job for everyone. And we really believe that. But we believe that there's the right job for everyone that can be pinpointed through technology. And so when you ask me what is Joveo and where is this data coming from, for 8 years now, hundreds of companies around the world are using our platform to hyper target the talent that they're looking for. And because our system is AI led, it's constantly learning, it's processing billions and billions of data points, not just the application transactions and the candidate flows, but also understanding who's where, who's looking, who's not looking, who's passive, who's active, where do they spend their time. And so capturing all of that data is a major source of what we're looking forward to sharing, and what you'll also find on our interactive insights that you mentioned earlier. So thank you for that. But we're also working with partners like Talent Neuron, who I think are going to be joining us today, and merging that with also the publicly available data. So by country, for instance, in the US, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're able to import all of that into our findings.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. So we're gonna get our friends at JobGet and Talent Neuron to join. We've also got some practitioner experience also in the hiring for some of these types of roles to give us some on the ground sort of experience as well. So we're going to bring those folks on in a bit, but I wonder whether we could just kind of give an overview of these 16 common occupations, Yaz. I mean, can you tell us what they are in broad strokes? Is it? I mean, should I share screen, or have you got anything that you want to share right now?
If you've got something in front of you that you want to share, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it too.
Let me share my screen at some risk. Let just share this. It should be okay. There's no risk here, is there? Allow. There we go. Let's share. Let's share screen here. Okay. Can you see? Can everyone see my screen, folks? This should say Joveo updated U.S. labor market trends and projections. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good stuff. And here we just go in and we can see some of these job roles here. Each one of these is a clickable, interactive. We're not going to have the time to dive through each of these, but you can see what kind of jobs we're talking about: bookkeeping, accounting clerks, sort of construction workers, customer service, electrician, food prep, delivery drivers, insurance claim processors, licensed practical nurses, nursing assistants, retail associates, and yes, software developers, waitresses. These are the types of jobs. They don't often get the visibility in our space that perhaps they deserve, but there's tens of
They
millions of
should
people
do.
doing
They
this.
should do. It's tempting to wonder, what do all of these have in common? And especially in the US labor market, when you think about the everyday jobs in terms of volume and in terms of the jobs that make life run, think back to COVID. What did we suddenly learn were essential workers? People weren't surprised that it was medical workers, but I think they were really surprised that it was warehouse stock people and pickers and packers. But where did they think their toilet paper was coming from that they all thought was going to run out in the grocery store? It's coming from these types of roles: the people who are delivering, the people that are building, the people that are keeping the books, the people that are running in retail shops. So these are not only the highest volume jobs in America, but very often the hardest to fill, because there's major shortages of truck drivers, major shortages of registered nurses.
Yeah, and folks, you might all remember that we kind of rebranded them essential workers, didn't we? Because it turned out that actually they were essential to keep society actually running. And your point about the stock fillers is pertinent, because it's a denigrated occupation, really. I mean, we often talk about people, go and stack some shelves or whatever, and it's, we dismiss that as a job that is beneath a lot of people. But in fact, if you don't do that, nothing gets sold. Like goods are not available to people if that doesn't happen. So someone has to do that work. And we had it seems that we had a brief moment where we wanted to re-establish or reevaluate how we value these jobs. And there was a brief moment where I thought, we might get there, but it seems that this is all now seemingly forgotten about again. And we're back to a different world where actually employers seem to have, the whip hand in large case. And a lot of these folks are also, battling away for these job opportunities. So anyway, let's have a look at some of these in part before we bring Dan and Ruchi on, and also Simon. Is any one of these that you want to pick on here, Yaz?
There are
that
a
we
few.
should...
In fact, there are a few hung, and I was thinking before I joined you, do we want to go through each of these individually? And actually, I think there's 5 points I can make. And a lot of this data is to be found in these individual insight reports. But I think, first of all, high level, the overall market in the US is frozen. And if you haven't heard it already, there's this phrase that people are using: low hire, low fire. Even Jerome Powell has used that phrase. We went from adding 186,000 jobs a month in 2024. By the end of last year, it's 17,000. Unique job postings are down 5 to 10% year over year. And you remember the Great Resignation? We were talking about COVID a minute ago. Quits have fallen back to pre-COVID levels. So people are staying put. Companies are hiring only for what they see as mission critical roles. So this is kind of the first thing that we're seeing in these reports.
Yeah, low hire, low fire. I think that is a term that is already becoming resonant in 2026. It's probably going to be one of the defining themes. So thank you for underlining that one, Yaz.
Even the number of layoffs that got announced in Q4 last year are not aligned to unemployment reports. And the reason for that is companies are counting in their layoff numbers the intent to not backfill. So instead of fire, that's just low hire. So the second point that we see in these reports, Hung, is there's a theme of divergence. So you have, on the one hand, you have white collar roles like software development, media. Hiring in those roles has cooled. At the same time, electrician, other blue collar trades, healthcare are either resilient or starting to boom. And that's in the US. I would also say, divergence wise, there's a geographic divergence, because while we're seeing some of this fluctuation in the US, in Asia, whether that's China, India, ASEAN, globally is the most durable. They've had the most steady state. So there's a major story, I think, of a tale of two worlds there.
Yeah, really interesting. So you're saying white collar has basically sort of gone downhill. Some people are talking white collar recession, but no one can hire a nurse, and no one can hire construction. We know that's a fact. And actually, a lot of these types of jobs have been performed by non-native labor, haven't they? That's certainly the case in the UK. I think it's the case in the US as well, where a lot of these types of jobs that we did call essential workers, truck driving, stock filling, waitressing, you know what? They're done by people that probably weren't born in the country. And we have to kind of also include the political moment, so to say, which seems to be conspicuously anti non-native people.
I think over time that's going to probably get even worse.
Yeah, that's the direction of travel, right? So the hiring requirements for these types of roles is going to get even worse. So yeah, really interesting context there, Yaz. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's a good segue into the third observation that we have, which is that applications have completely exploded. And I think for recruiters and talent acquisition leads who are listening to this, that's not going to be any surprise. If have a guess what the multiple changes between number of applications per job in 2022 versus this past November. Just guess a multiple, how much it's gone up.
2022, so that's 3 years ago. And that's probably still, the Build Back Better era. I reckon it's probably increased by times 2. Has it increased,
9x,
doubled?
9x.
Oh, I'm way off. That's
But
crazy.
but apply to hire rates are down because employers are completely drowning in volume. They're starving for, signal. And one of the things that's exacerbating that is a third or more of the job listings that are out there are ghost jobs. And so there's a lot of data that we're seeing that's roughly 1 out of every 5 applications for a remote role are fake or identity misrepresented. So you have ghost jobs, you have ghost applications, and this constitutes a kind of application flood for recruiters.
What do you mean ghost jobs? Like the job is just genuinely fake, or is it just like people have left it up there because they forgot about it? Or it's
That happens. That happens too. But what we're seeing is a significant increase in the number of jobs that are not what they claim to be, that are
right.
positioning
Interesting.
themselves as a paid job, but is actually maybe for multi-level marketing or is actually to enroll you in some sort of
Mm.
fee-based program.
Yeah, that's really, really bad news. And I've seen some cases where it is outright fraud, where remote job person gets the job, quote unquote, goes through full process, and then they're asked to go and buy a bunch of stuff in order to, activate as a remote employee. And, somehow that's a fraudulent a way for them to get payment data or whatever it is. So yeah, that's definitely not good.
And I see
And
Thaisa is asking what the source is of that statistic. And so the Joveo team that's on this call is going to respond to that with our source for you there, Thaisa. I
yeah,
just have 2 more, Hung. Can I give you 2 more?
two more. Let's go. Yeah.
So the fourth observation that we've made is that costs are fragmenting. And what we are seeing, this is a big reason why so many of our clients work with us is because we have a role to play in suppressing the increase in the overall cost per hire. The overall cost per hire rose only 3.15%. So that's beneath the average. It's not consistently across all roles. For instance, software developers, which we talked about earlier, but also electricians, hiring costs have gone up by 40% plus.
This is not
Um,
electricians, right? Because that's just is that wages? Is that simply because of demand has just pushed the wages of qualified electricians up?
it's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. It's just what we see as the cost per hire increase.
Mm.
And then on the other side of that story, warehouse and delivery roles, the cost per hire is dropping pretty significantly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's
if we
labor
if we make
availability.
a determination of what's happening, it's that the market is rewarding, those scarcer skills and rewarding, like we said earlier, essential services, while roles that are quote unquote commoditized, and may seem weird to refer to software developer as commoditized, um, sorry, as delivery roles to be commoditized, those are cheaper to hire.
Mm.
That's our fourth observation. And then the fifth one, which I think is interesting for all of us, because there's certainly a lot of talk and speculation about it, is the impact that AI is having on demand and also on wages. And so the stat that I want to share here is that if you look at the number of postings, the share of job postings that mention AI, it's up 122% in the US over the last 2 years. It's up over 200% in the UK.
Mm.
So if you remember, there was a supercut of Sundar Pichai at a Google thing like last year,
Mhm.
and he says the word AI like 260 times, and it's pretty funny. The job postings are starting to look like that too. So a huge surge in the number of roles where AI is at least mentioned. And we think that's in line with what we're going to see over the next 5 years. The other data we have shows that employers expect almost 40% of core skills are going to change by 2030. So that's one important point. Talent that has actual advanced AI fluency, which is still very rare, they can command more than 50% additional wages or additional compensation. And I think that's also going to only accelerate. So we're kind of in a two-speed economy. People who can pair AI with human judgment are going to accelerate. People who are doing some kind of routine cognitive work are going to get commoditized.
Yeah, and the routine cognitive work is kind of intimidating phrase because if we think of ourselves, the sort of stuff that you do when you're zoned out, that man, is, I think everyone would admit there's quite a large percentage of stuff that isn't particularly cognitively tasking, but just has to be done. A lot of just ticking and bashing, a lot of, let's format this in this direction, let's move that bit of information to another place. Like, how much of white collar work is actually that?
And especially entry level white collar work, which is where, that was the big story last year, was
Right.
has there been a complete downturn in campus recruitment from consulting, from investment banking, from even CPG and accounting firms and law firms, where your first couple of years you're doing such repetitive routine work. It requires intelligence, but it's almost semi-automated from a human perspective, and now it's completely automated from an AI perspective.
And I think all of us who've gone through some sort of corporate training, I think anybody wearing a collar probably has had that, will recognize now that the first 12 months, maybe even longer, you were doing essentially on the job training via low cognitive effort work. It was just grind. You were doing the internet research, you were doing the presentation checks, you're putting addendums onto documents, you were doing proofreading. Guess what? All of that stuff AI can do right now. And so the payoff back then, pre-AI, was that companies were thinking, you know what? This young kid would be useful for the next 12 months, not particularly useful, but we're going to get him to do something. But the main value is that we're going to build that individual into a productive employee 12, 18 months down the track. The calculus today is that actually no, AI can do all of that stuff that he or she, was kind of productive doing. And why do we need to worry about 12, 18 months down the line? Like, no one's thinking along those terms. So I think we have a long-term, in society-wide issue here, don't we? It's not one thing for one company. It's everybody. Okay, let's bring on some of our guests here. Yaz, they're going to help us talk through this and see how we go. We have Simon Ryan here. Simon, great to see you, sir. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, great. Great chat, first and foremost, guys. Really enjoyed the data. Fantastic. So I'm Simon Ryan. I'm the co-founder of Chapter 2 Health Talent, and we are a new gen embedded organization which specializes in health. So we cover a lot of roles clinically, including nurses, doctors, etc.
Yeah, fantastic. And you had some recent experience in recruiting these healthcare workers in the US, Simon. Is that right?
Yes, we had a project where a med tech company launched from Europe into the US. They had no presence and they needed to hire 175 staff in 6 months. 80% of them were nurses. And your question, is it easier or harder? I would say that situation was like a paradox because we've got better tools and better data, but the competition for nurses is really, really high. So, yeah, it was a 10-point framework we developed, but we had to exhaust all avenues to ensure that we delivered on the project, which we did.
Yeah, we'll dive into the healthcare side a little bit more because I think that's one of the persistent sectors that's going to
Yeah,
forever be required, isn't it? We have Dan
for sure.
Sapir here. Dan, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Dan Saper. I'm the GM of JobGet. We are the home for the everyday worker. Our inventory of job sites and ATSs we own include JobGet, Snagajob, Seasoned, and Phonebow.
Brilliant stuff. I've just shared Dan's LinkedIn in the chat there. Make sure you connect with him. And we have Ruka Van Kudra here. Ruka, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. My name is Rucha, and I am a senior labor economist at Talent Neuron. Talent Neuron is the only solution available right now that drives workforce transformation by unifying both internal talent intelligence and external market insight. So we're really bringing together all of the data that's out there to allow companies to figure out how they can best position themselves and their talent moving forward.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Guys, sort of Yaz gave us a very good, like, high level 5 big insights from the data that was captured and now presented to the audience via the Joveo interactive website. Do you have any particular sort of theories as to why the market has gone the way it has? I mean, beyond the obvious, like we know, for instance, there is a huge change in the candidate marketplace from where it was 3 years or so ago. Everyone it's within living memory for everyone, I think, 2021, where, if you had a pulse, you'd get a job. It was like no one could hire anybody. But now it seems that we're getting stories of people, applying 500 times and getting no interviews, really high qualified people. I think we all know super talented, skilled people that are spending way too long on the job market and looking for work. And everyone's thinking, how can this possibly be the case? What's your theories on this? And can you give us some sort of narrative? Rucha, why don't we go with you as the labor market economist? What's your view on this?
Sure. So I agree with a lot of what Yaz said, particularly the low hire, low fire. To me, I'm sort of thinking of the economy right now as molasses. So if you think about, spilling milk, it's going to go everywhere quickly. You spill the molasses and everything's just kind of stuck, and it's still a mess and no one's happy about it, but at least it's not like flying everywhere. And that's kind of how I feel where we are with the economy right now. So I don't know if people outside the US pay attention, but this morning we had our jobs report come out, which is a big deal over here. And we found that the US economy added fewer jobs last month than people were expecting. We added about 50,000 jobs instead of 73. And I think the most interesting thing that we're seeing now is we also saw huge revisions downward for both October and then slight ones for November. And what that means is that if you look at the total job growth this year, it's actually the lowest we've seen since 2003 outside of a recession year. So that's not really great news for anyone. And what I would say is to sort of the narrative behind it. While I completely agree with Yaz that, if you look at the postings themselves, there's a lot of mention of AI. If you look specifically at what they're asking people to do with AI, it's not that much yet, outside of obviously, AI specific tech jobs, different story. But I'm saying in general, everyone's mentioning AI, but it's things like, knowing how to use it. And they just mean like typing in prompts, right? They don't mean anything beyond that. And so I think, honestly, there's a lot, companies like to blame AI for a lot of things, right? So I think things are very uncertain now, particularly here in the US. Policies, geopolitical conflict, right? The world's, as you said, a very crazy place. And I think it's easy when you're saying, why are you doing layoffs, to be like, well, AI, we're just so much more productive now, right? As opposed, because if you say that, then everyone's like, oh, great, right? Company's doing well. If instead you say, oh, we're not making as much money and our profits are down, no one likes that answer. And so I think a lot of companies are being cautious, as they should be in this environment. And then it's easier to turn to something like AI and be like, well, no one could have predicted that. And that's not to say that I don't think AI will be making a big splash. Obviously it will. I just don't think we're seeing it yet in the way it's been talked up. And so I think companies who really figure out how to use it are going to be the ones who succeed.
Really interesting nuance there. So AI is mentioned, maybe ubiquitously so, but what does they actually mean? Like, maybe we're looking for AI literacy, perhaps, in the same way, like, 20 years ago, we were talking about, digitally savvy or something, meaning can you use the internet? And now maybe it's the same vibe. We're not looking for AI skills per se. It's like, look, can you know how to prompt something? And are you comfortable
exactly right? Like, have you used ChatGPT? That's what they're looking for.
Yeah. Dan, you wanted to say something there?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of it comes down to economic uncertainty, right? Like whether it's tariffs and will they or won't they happen, or what's happening in Venezuela or otherwise. Every time we see a major turn, right? Whatever the impact actually will be, good or bad. I think we've seen companies, because there's been so much economic uncertainty, they say, wait a second, I'm going to pause, right? Let me think about that. So we see a lot of roles come up and go down quickly without being fulfilled. And then we also see, I think about AI in a different lens, right? You have all these job seekers that, you have a whole bunch of people that have been laid off or otherwise have been looking for jobs and have been on the market for a really long time. They've even aged out a lot of these, reports. They're relying on AI to apply to a whole bunch of jobs, right? So you have people that used to be able to get through, a few application processes per day, applying to hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs at a time, right? And that really breaks the traditional hiring model of, I'm going to get people into an ATS, I'm going to manually look at them. And so all of a sudden you have the other piece there with economic uncertainty is a lot of talent acquisition organizations have flattened, right? So where you used to have 10 people looking at all these resumes, you have one. And all of a sudden you have, instead of 600 applies, it's 6,000, and it's really hard to get through all of that, right? So I see from a job seeker perspective, it becomes incredibly frustrating because they can't figure out a way to get through the noise, and then they're leaning into AI to apply to more, and then you have employers who can't get through all those job seekers, right? So right now, it's just become really difficult to get through all that noise, and I think at the same time that frustrates companies, and then they are like, okay, forget this, and then they really think about, hey, what's really mission critical to us? And then they're also looking for that needle in the haystack that looks exactly like the exact person on that job description. So it becomes really difficult to kind of stand up from the noise.
Yeah, time to hire has increased, hasn't it? Yeah, it's broadly across the piece. I mean, I think there was I forget the data again, but it was that back end of 2021, 22, where essentially people were doing like one-shot offers, one interview, let's get the offer out ASAP. That obviously then sort of compresses the time to hire, but that's now fully extended back again, hasn't it? Because hiring managers want to see the next candidate because they know actually there is another candidate if they just put the job out long enough. And I totally take your point, Dan, about denuded TA teams that are having to do all of this more with less. We've heard this ad infinitum last 3 years. Guess what? There's down to the bare bones, and now handling a surge of applicants. We're getting crushed. Like, we're getting overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that we have to deal with. Yes, have you got any? I mean, again, putting you on the spot, but is there any high level of sort of that you know of on time to hire? Like, what's the general level of increase, decrease over the last couple of years, do you reckon?
So I don't have a specific stat on the increase, but we know from our clients that it is the top two problems that most employers are trying to solve right now because of easy apply, because of AI generated applications. The top two problems they're trying to solve are applicant quality and time to fill. And what evidence we do have is, for instance, the fake applications. And whether you think of that as a sort of AI spurred or just generally fake, and it's hard to tell the difference. The number of fake remote job applications that we see is approximately 20%. And this is not just in the job market. This is a huge problem in education, where you have a massive number of people applying because they're then going to use the acceptance letter to get a loan that they have no intention to either spend on the school or repay. So you have all these sort of fraud schemes happening. We don't have the data on the time to hire. That's going to be an interesting one for us to get for you. But I think in general, this flooding of applications, whether it's, they refer to it as an application flood or an application deluge, healthcare is dealing with this probably the most right now. In the job market, universities are dealing with the fake ones.
What's the solution to this? It seems to me companies might stop posting jobs. I mean, is that happening? Do you think so? Job postings might go down, but if I was recruiting for a job right now and I was thinking, you know what, if I switch this on, I get 1,000 sort of my inbox gets blown up. I ain't posting the job. I'm gonna go to a recruitment agency, go to my network, go to some other mechanism. So suddenly the job advert no longer is connected to actually the job creation because it's no longer an effective way of doing it. What are your thoughts on that, Simon? Go to you on this. We're talking about nursing. How did you hire those nurses? Was it through ads or it was another way?
Yeah.
Simon,
yeah, no, great,
go on.
Great question. So from a clinical and healthcare point of view, it has to be advertised as a. Oh, can you hear me?
Well, you're a little bit choppy, but that's yeah. Go again. Just repeat the last thing you said, Simon.
Hello.
I think he's. We're in the UK, folks. We don't have sort of proper internet here. So Okay, we're struggling with that. No
If you can.
worries. Simon, I don't think we can, but maybe we can get you back onto this question in a little while. But let's Rucha, I think you wanted to come in on this. So let's hear from
Yes.
you on this concept of, you know what, at some point companies are going to stop advertising because there's no solution here. What's your take on that? Is that happening?
Well, so first I want to say, don't worry about the bad internet in the UK. We have bad healthcare here, so it's up and down, depends where you are. I think companies are not going to stop posting. In a lot of places, at least in the US, it's actually there's a legal requirement. Places that take any federal money, so not necessarily companies, but in a lot of places, just because of the way policies are set up, you do have to post. But what I do think is going to happen, and I think I saw Christy or someone mention this here, is that the easier thing to do is going to be to go to your networks, which is what you said, Hung, right? So I think it's actually, we're going to create this sort of funneling where the people who are good and people who are known are actually just going to keep getting jobs, right? And they're going to keep moving. And there was actually an article that came out in the Wall Street Journal the other day that was talking about how sort of the big investment firms, consulting firms in the US are now much more going back to their model of just recruiting as early as they can from Ivy League schools, right? They don't want the applications. They want to say, I'm going to go to a place where I kind of trust people. I'm going to meet those people, and then I'm just going to hire them. And the problem here is that I think, a couple of years ago, we were really in this age where, because you could do so much online, you could get so many certifications, we were bringing more people into these jobs than we had been. And now I think because of this overflow of applications, we're moving back the other way, right? No one wants to read. You're not going to read 100 applications, then find out that 30 of them were bots, right? Like, that's just a waste of time from people's perspective. And so I think we're going to really have sort of move back maybe to degree requirements and gatekeeping in a way that we were hoping to move away from.
Good and bad, Yaz, right? Because it means that actually employer branding and stuff like this, community development, network development, all of the stuff, actually stuff that Joveo look as if they might be looking to support, that's going to be a growth area. Because at the end of the day, posting publicly, yeah, we're going to do that. Legally, we might do so. But unless we have a solution to either more accurately target where those adverts go, or have some sort of filtration ability of candidates coming through, it's going to be overwhelming. So maybe we try other things, like let's build a better career site, for instance, that is highly tuned. Let's say there's a community function in the career site. People can be activated there in a different way. Good and bad in a sense. It's good because there's EB type activity going on, but kind of bad in a sense. Doesn't this lead to stuff like nepotism a bit more, and goes back to credentialism somewhat, and all this type of stuff?
I think that's the pessimist view, and I'm sure that will happen. But I think there's a general flight towards more specialized roles. We're seeing generalist roles are going to have a sharp decline. Specialized roles, AI, cybersecurity, some of those roles we talked about in healthcare, those are going to stay resilient. So overall postings, I agree. I think overall postings will go down, continue to go down. But companies are going to need to focus more on critical roles or quote unquote strategic priorities. And so for that, we will see more investment in, for instance, with a lot of our clients, building not just a career site, but a bespoke landing page for a specific role in a specific geography to attract that talent. Or the concept of hyper-targeting becomes ever more important, and being able to see through the kind of BS that AI created in their resume to actually identify with proof of work. If you're a developer, point us to the portfolio. If you can't do that, maybe your CV is not worth looking at. So I think this move away from generalist roles and much more towards specialized roles is going to be where they start to invest more and employer brand, not just at the corporate level, but by role. Where we saw this in the last 10 years? Banks were competing with big tech for technology people. How do you convince someone that being a developer at Goldman is as prestigious as being a developer at Google? They had to build a whole employer brand around being in IT in IB. So I think similarly, we're going to see that more specific employer branding, EVP developed for specific specialized roles.
Yeah, I love that, and I think I've done a full 180 on the prospects of EB. I know I speak to my EB friends, and they're a little bit thinking, "Oh my goodness, we've got another tough year ahead." I think yes, it's maybe a tough year, but that I think that is the route forward. We're going to have very custom, almost like real time generated EB for a particular team. Maybe it's like it's at a team basis on a certain location. That's what's going to be. And I love this idea of spinning up sort of almost like an events page. So forget about a static career site that just sits there in all cases all the time. That may still be there on the corporate side, but you might get like event style sort of pages for particular teams and particular jobs. I think that's a pretty good thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Dan? I mean, you're kind of in this space also. So are you like this kind of, how do you call it, ephemeral career pages? Like almost like a disappearing career page.
So there's some interesting themes here, and it's really, as I'm hearing what everyone's saying, it's really about building trust, right? Like it's going to trust as a job seeker or as a employer, right? And that might be going to your network or going to the Ivy League school in white collar. And I also agree, like when you don't have that network, the verticalized branding and focusing on the roles that matter most are really critical. We don't get into that. We leave that to our friends like Yaz at Joveo, and they do a great job on that. I also think that like the space I play in, which is high volume hiring, everyday workers, right? Like it's really interesting because if you're looking for warehouse workers in mass, and by the way, like even though we've seen cost per hires go down in warehouse working, it's some roles are just filling themselves, and others they're still impossible to fill, right? So the budget shift, the focus should shift, and we've seen in at least the high velocity, high volume, repeatable roles that like your average everyday worker doesn't really care about brand as much as they care about speed, right? They're like, I need money right now, right? I need to get through, and then the employer, once again, they're still dealing with that influx of bot applications or a ton of unqualified or trying to get through the noise. So I think in those scenarios, it's about technology and workflow and vetting people early on. And we've seen our most successful partnerships. Like we do a lot in QSR, FSR, think like Taco Bell, KFC type franchises where, we start with an easy apply, get that job seeker through a funnel as quickly as possible, vet them through text messaging back and forth. Are you the right person? And then immediately get them to an interview, like same day interviewing, right? That speed is key in that scenario more than employer branding. I also do agree there are definitely verticals where like employer brand is so key. Exactly to Yaz's point, if you're fighting for tech folks, when it's your Goldman Sachs versus Google, like that is the right path. And certainly in certain high volume roles, it's the same thing. But I also think there's a speed component. And in any of these scenarios, it's building trust between job seekers and employers.
Really good point, Dan. And I think maybe big part of the problem we have in recruitment is that we've sort of universalized certain principles, haven't we? When in fact there's different types of recruitment that require almost the opposite principle. So right now there's a conversation going on in the community about, actually the applicant deluge. So recruiters are our fault because we've promoted this easy apply sort of world, and guess what? Easy apply means applicant deluge now, and we can't deal with it. But in fact, certain sectors, as you say, high volume frontline work, people want easy apply, mobile phone. They're not going to fill out a form. They just they're available. That time is right, location's right, ready to go. Let's go. But that is a different person to, let's say, I don't know, a quant sitting in a bank, getting headhunted to another bank. Presumably that's not an easy apply guy, right? That's a person that's going to want a little bit of a different sort of journey into the job. Simon, I want to try and bring you in because it looks like the internet has come back to the UK. Tell us a bit about hiring nurses. Yes. How did you do it?
We exhausted.
Oh,
he's
no.
out. He's out. I don't think we're going to hear this story. Simon, listen, I think we're struggling. But let me know whether, I don't know. Can you try again just one more time?
Yeah, sorry, it's snowing in the UK, so it's disrupted the internet. Are you receiving that?
Yeah, it's true. We're hearing okay. All right. I don't think we can get Simon in real time. It's a struggle. No worries, Simon. Hang on with us. But yeah, hiring for healthcare, for instance, is one of those things which is going to be a persistent challenge. And I'm quite keen to kind of figure out, okay, how do we? Is there anybody doing it in a way that can be modeled elsewhere? Like, for instance, is there a certain set of principles that would actually work in most cases to get nurses, high quality, qualified nurses into these job opportunities? Anybody, any thoughts on that? Obviously, Simon, you can pop in, but I wonder whether anybody else. Go ahead, yes.
This is going to sound maybe counterintuitive because we think of healthcare as an in-person job and an in-person patient experience, but remote opportunities in healthcare are really accelerating. And this concept of virtual first patient care is actually in some places becoming a standard. And so what we've seen in our data, registered nurses, demand for remote has jumped from 2% to 3%. And it's largely related to telehealth, okay? Which telehealth, if you haven't already experienced health care over the phone or via video, that's already approaching $50 billion plus as a standalone industry. So there's a massive opportunity there for registered nurses, for nursing assistants, LPNs, to expand their experience, their skills in remote work, because we're seeing those openings continue to scale.
Yeah, really interesting. And telehealth we're getting pushed to do it, aren't we? I mean, even as patients, the first thing that the practitioners and providers of healthcare want you to do is to actually interact with something in advance rather than go in to see a doctor. So yeah, I think we do need to get into that sort of that mindset in due course. Okay, no worries. We've lost Simon, but that's all fine. Do try and come back in, Simon. Let me know. Raise your hand, and we will bring you back into frame. Let's do some forward focusing. I know this is not like a predictions post or a forecast post in any way, but as we're into 2026, we might as well give it a shot. What do you think is going to happen with, I mean, do you think the trends that we saw from the data that's been provided here with Joveo continue to be the case in 2026? Or is there going to be a reverse? I'm thinking the one thing in my mind here is obviously the significant job losses in the US federal government workforce. 300,000 people fired over a weekend or something crazy like that. And I'm thinking, you know what, those folks, some of those folks have to be bouncing back now because those government services have to keep going. Like they're going to be brought back by contract. They're going to be somebody going to spin up a company and start providing a professional service with half the same people. I mean, what do you think about that government workforce? Are they going to just diffuse into the economy in a different way, or do they come back and supply back into government? It just maybe in a slightly different sort of employer sense. Any thoughts on that?
I can go first. I mean, we have made an observation that, and the U.S. Federal government and the administration has been pretty open about this, that their intention, separate from outcomes, but their intention is reduce the overall size of the federal workforce, but increase the quality. And that government should be as attractive to the private sector employee as it is to the public sector employee. And so the observation that we've made is wages in government and public sector will increase. And the statistic that we have, and again, our team can provide the source, is that it should be an increase around 4%, which is higher than, for instance, high tech. So to give you a sense, that's obviously probably starting from a lower base. But if they intend to catch up with, private sector workforce availability, then they're going to have to increase wages. So that's one of the things we're seeing for 2026.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ruka.
I was going to say, I agree that they've claimed that is their intent. I would also say that the government has claimed for a while that their intent is to compete with private workforces and has been sort of ringing this drum for a while, and that was before they fired everyone. So I'd be pretty shocked if those people are going back anytime in the next 2 years within this administration.
Yeah. By the way, the employer branding
it's not good right now.
Not at all. I mean, you can imagine a lot of people, like really traumatically affected. We often forget, but a lot of the government workers that were fired were actually lifetime employees circulating within those government sectors and being civil servants and public servants for that period of time, suddenly chopped out and told, okay, go away. I can imagine a lot of people might just think, okay, no chance, see you later. So a lot of institutional knowledge lost out of the government. I've just shared a link there. I don't know whether you guys have seen this. Techforce.gov. Is that something that's familiar to the people in the panel or audience? Basically, I think this is what Yaz is talking about. It's like, okay, we're going to rebuild everything with tech, and this is like the Trump administration's attempt to say, right, we're going to hire all the best engineers and then rebuild the government services with a pure play tech solution. I would love to know, whoever's recruiting for this institution, like, how's it going? Let me know. I'd love to get you on the show and talk about this, because it looks like a fairly significant declaration. At least I think it's a lovely website. But yeah, it's it'd be interesting to know whether that's actually tracked forward into actually a significant hiring push. But it could be it could be a reinvention of things.
The other thing I would say actually though is that keep in mind that when the government did this huge shrink, there was a lot of jobs that are not in the government, but if you think about like nonprofit, grant work, all of that stuff, that shrunk a lot too. So I think, saying, oh, well, this was like a one-time decrease, all the jobs are fine, is not quite right. Because most of those people, especially if you look at, yes, did unemployment go down slightly? Yeah, it went down. I think they revised down from 4.6% in November to 4.5%, and now they're saying we're at 4.4%. So sure. So a bunch of those jobs were there, but that's not the main story, I would say, of the economy, right? So I think we're seeing is beyond just that government reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Simon, we've got you back. We're going to give it another shot, mate. Tell us about nursing hiring. How did you do it? Let's see if we can get the internet sort of working for us for at least your bit here.
Thank you, guys. I'm so sorry. Thanks for your patience. Just going on the government side of things, for nursing, out of the 50 states, 43 states mean that nurses can travel to different states. There's 7 states that are still not, meaning like New York, if you're a qualified nurse in New York, you can't just go and work in another state. And I think that is restricting the capacity of workforce to travel. Overall, in terms of that project that we delivered, and we delivered it quite a few times for our clients, is exhausting all avenues. The owner of that business, the health tech business, wanted us to block our LinkedIn emails to the point that we'd exhausted all messages. However, looking at the average age of a nurse, it's the average of 40 to 50 years old. They're not on LinkedIn. So we did a lot of in real life events, hiring out the locations and bringing mass events in. But for us, we had to exhaust the employer branding, the events, LinkedIn, everything, programmatic advertising, and have our top tier talent partners. And I think because we were embedded within the 4 walls, we could mean we've got the talent partner, the tech, and the employer branding, and that's what made the major difference for us.
Yeah, proper recruitment. As I say, you can't just sit on LinkedIn and recruit nurses. I think everyone knows that.
No.
You got to do other things. You got to get out there. There are probably places where nurses hang out. Like every industry has a sector, as a digital sort of channel where they talk and exchange information. You've just got to build brand in those spaces, don't you?
Facebook in particular is extremely beneficial for nurses in the US, for sure.
Facebook, I think, is the one that got away. Just a quick one on this. Did anyone notice Facebook local jobs? That came out sort of with no announcement whatsoever, and no one's heard of anything of it ever since. And it's obviously going to be another dead end. But I looked at that and I thought, you know what? Facebook is probably the only organization I could possibly think about creating a blue collar LinkedIn, let's say, because it does have so many people on it. But they just don't give a F about it. It's like, okay, this is a massive opportunity. They're not doing it. So what can you say? Okay, we're still on forecast, folks. So Dan, let's go to you on this. Where do you see the labor market in the US in 2026? Is there anything? Is it going to just be on trend as it was in 2025 and just more of the same, or do you think there's anything that's a little bit surprising or unusual you think is going to happen?
I mean, I hate to say this, but I think it's going to be more of the same. I think there's going to be a lot of start and stop with what I'm seeing happening in the government. I think that's the main contributor, good or bad, of what the outcomes are. And for the actual economy, I think that every time there's some sort of big change, people say, wait, let me hold on. Like, let me pause on hiring and wait for another 3 months. Right. So I think that that's the biggest factor. So we need some stability and quiet on that front. And then I think we'll see things change. But until that happens, I'd say we're going to see more of the same.
We're just one rage tweet away from making a catastrophic decision, aren't we? I mean, you can imagine a CEO thinking, "Yeah, all right, I'm going to start building. Let's hire these 20 people in this location." One tweet, suddenly that's the worst mistake ever. You've killed your business. So of course you're not going to make that risk.
I actually hear about this every day, right? My father-in-law is a CFO for a dog toy company, which is kind of funny, but I hear, especially when the tariff stuff was going on, he'd get beds made in China, right? And then all of a sudden it goes way up, or what's the tariff going to be, or do we have to shift to a different country? And then it's, tariffs are going on Brazil, and that's where they get the raw hides from. So it's once again, I use this as one example, but if you were thinking about, stocking your warehouse, right? How many people do I need is based on how many things am I going to sell, which is based on how much does this stuff cost me to make, right? I think every company is going through that sort of thing. And thinking about the logistics and thinking about costs, et cetera. And anytime something's changing, they're like, wait, how is this actually going to affect me? And it takes time to actually really think about that. I think everyone's just so cautious right now. So everyone's just slow to make moves.
Yeah, basically the chaos is bad for recruitment, at least permanent recruitment, because it's one of the biggest things, line items in terms of fixed cost. And there is, I think, unfortunately, going to be a case where the chaos is going to essentially move the fixed costs into variable costs. We're going to Uberize a lot of industries as a result of this. And that injects precarity into a lot of people's lives where previously they hadn't thought they'd have to handle. So that's just the reality of it. And we've just got to roll with those punches as much as we can. Absolutely bad for job seekers, Thais. 100%. We are conscious of this. Very, very tough. What about the job seeking side? We've talked a little bit about AI mass supply. We've talked a little bit about maybe changing tactics from employers in order to deal with, this deluge. What is the best advice, would you say, for a job seeker, legit from a job seeker's point of view, leaving aside sort of what's good for the recruiter or the employer? If you're a job seeker today, what's the best advice you'd give to that person to maximize opportunities? Dan, I'll go with you first, but I'd love to everyone to have a go at this as the final question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go quick. Tap into your network, right? If you know somebody that works someplace you want to, go ask them and don't say, hey, do you have any jobs? You have to say, hey, very specifically, yes, I want a sales job at Joveo. I'd be a great fit for these reasons. Can you pass me along? And then probably throw a funny, and you'll probably even get a referral fee, right? Sweeten the pot, right? And then separate from that, as you're looking for jobs, be really specific on what you're looking for, because companies are not trying to take risks right now. They're looking for people that are a really good fit for that role. And so actually match your skills to that job you're on. Otherwise, you're going to apply to a million jobs and hear nothing, right? Which is incredibly frustrating. So be very surgical and specific in your search.
Yeah, brilliant. Two pieces of advice, Dan. I love it. Number one, tap the network. Number two, be very specific in your own sort of job search. Brilliant stuff. Simon, go to you next.
Yeah, I would say two things. If you've got, for nurses, we're saying to them, do some courses that are different to what you're qualified in, meaning AI courses for free on LinkedIn. Diversify your skill set. So when you're applying, you're having that different. And my other thing is definitely your personal brand. Put yourself out there more and more as much as you can to stand out. If you've got two people with the same experience and one of them has more of a personal brand, they are being more attractive to future employers.
100%. And this also pertains to this sort of fear of deepfakes and fear of fraudulent stuff. If there's just a little bit more evidence this is a real human being, then you know what? There's going to be a couple of percentage points going your way. Brilliant advice, Simon. Rucha, let's go with you. What's your advice to a job seeker?
100% what Dan said, but want to just add the slight modification as well, that tap your network early. And I think this was implied in what you said, but don't wait till you see the job and then tell someone, oh, I want this job. Because in a lot of these cases, people have ideas in mind already. By the time the job gets posted, they've already had 5 people talk to them. And so they're going to stick with those. So, you really got to put yourself out there along with the personal branding and say, this is what I'm looking for. Keep me in mind, so that when the job gets posted, and there's not going to be as many of them, someone's already thinking of you.
I love it, Rucha. That is exactly it. Network when you don't need it. It's too late when you need it. You got to build sort of constantly. Okay, Yaz, take us away. Final comment to you for you. What's your advice for a job seeker in 2026?
There's a quote I like, which is, the intelligence of man is best defined as the combination of humans and their machines. So my advice to job seekers is redescribe or redefine what you do. In legal, 80% of paralegal tasks are going to get replaced by AI. Routine accounting replaced by AI. But if you're a legal counsel and you've become adept at using different LLMs, call yourself an AI human counsel. That's a real title. And that role in particular is seeing a significant wage premium over people who just refer to themselves as in-house counsel. Right? Same thing in medicine. 80% of diagnostic screenings, at least the initial ones, are being passed off to AI, but patient-facing, empathy-heavy roles are growing. So if you can prove that you've got that capability, remember in the old days, people used to put on their resume, I know how to use Microsoft Word, and then it became ridiculous to do that. Right now, it's not ridiculous to say, I'm adept at using certain AI tools, therefore I'm more efficient and can use more of my time to do more human-based skills. I think that's the direction it goes to. I think one of you was saying personal branding. Same thing, redescribe and redefine who you are and what you do.
Fantastic stuff, Yaz. Thank you everyone for joining. Dan Sapir, Rucha Van Kudra, Simon Ryan, and Yaz Dalal. What a wonderful conversation. And by the way, I think Joveo will be producing a PDF of the report that we just kind of clicked through. So that will be available to people. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in getting a copy of that. In the meantime, the interactive is up there. So go ahead and click through it yourself. Wonderful conversation to start off the year. Thank you everyone for watching, everybody. I will leave it there. Have a very good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hung. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Hung. Thank you, everyone.